Hamilton did not need a long radio message to expose Ferrari's true sprint pace. One lap at Silverstone may have already said enough, because after Hamilton took sprint pole, the entire paddock was forced to look at the SF-26 differently. Not as a car hoping to survive the sprint, not as a Ferrari waiting for luck, but as a machine that may finally have the speed, balance, and tire control Hamilton needs to turn pole into pressure. And that is the dangerous part. Silverstone does not reward fake pace. It exposes drag. It exposes high-speed stability. It exposes tire stress. It exposes whether a driver truly trusts the car or is just dragging it through one heroic lap. So if Hamilton can put the SF-26 at the front there, the question becomes much bigger than qualifying. Was that just one perfect Silverstone moment, or did Hamilton just reveal the Ferrari has real sprint pace? Because if the car is only quick for one lap, rivals can attack. But if the SF-26 can repeat that speed, protect the tires, defend the straights, and give Hamilton clean air at the front, then Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, and everyone chasing have a much darker problem. They are not waiting for Ferrari to fade. They are trying to stop Hamilton before he turns the sprint into a controlled Ferrari statement. Silverstone is where Ferrari's truth stops hiding behind hope. At some circuits, a team can look quick and still leave the paddock unsure. Maybe the tires switched on perfectly. Maybe the wind helped. Maybe the track layout covered the car's weaknesses. Maybe the driver found one lap that the car could never repeat again. But Silverstone does not give that kind of protection. Silverstone asks the same question in every fast corner, every straight, every heavy load through the tires. Is the car real? That is why Hamilton's sprint pole matters so much. Because the SF-26 did not reveal itself at a gentle circuit. It revealed itself at one of the most demanding tracks on the calendar, where fake balance gets punished, weak exits become obvious, and nervous cars start bleeding time before the driver can hide it. And Hamilton did not just survive that test. He put Ferrari at the front. That is the first sign that the sprint pace question is much bigger than a single qualifying result. Because to take sprint pole at Silverstone, Hamilton needed more than bravery. He needed the car to answer him. He needed the front end to turn when he asked. He needed the rear to stay calm when the throttle opened. He needed enough straight-line speed to finish the lap strongly, but enough corner stability to attack the fastest sections without lifting away from the moment. That combination is what rivals fear. Not one strength, a combination. If the SF-26 were only fast on the straights, rivals could prepare to attack it in the corners. If it were only strong in the corners, they could hunt it down on the straights. If it were only good for one lap, they could wait for the sprint to expose the tires. But Hamilton's pole raises a different possibility. What if Ferrari has found enough of everything? Enough speed to defend, enough balance to commit, enough tire confidence to survive, enough control for Hamilton to turn clean air into a weapon. That is where the story becomes uncomfortable for Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, and everyone behind. Because sprint pace is not just about how fast a car can go once. Sprint pace is about whether the car can keep giving the driver something useful lap after lap, while pressure is building and the tires are slowly being asked harder questions. A qualifying lap is like a single punch. Sprint pace is whether the fighter can keep standing, keep moving, and keep landing clean shots when the other side starts swinging back. That is what Hamilton may have exposed. Not just Ferrari's speed, Ferrari's ability to fight. And at Silverstone, that matters more than the headline. Because once the sprint begins, the car behind Hamilton will not be chasing a timing screen. It will be chasing dirty air, tire temperature, corner exits, straight-line defense, and the judgment of one of the most experienced drivers Formula One has ever seen. That is not an easy chase. Hamilton knows how to make a car ahead feel larger than it is. He knows how to choose the pace. He knows how to place the car so the driver behind has to think twice. He knows how to save tire without looking slow. He knows how to make a rival believe the move is almost there, then take it away before the braking zone. And if SF-26 has genuine sprint pace, that skill becomes dangerous immediately. Because Hamilton will not need to overdrive. He will not need to defend like he is desperate. He will not need to burn everything in the opening laps just to survive. He can manage. And management from the front is one of the most painful things for rivals to fight. The chasing driver sees the Ferrari ahead. He pushes through the fast corners, trying to stay close. But following another car at Silverstone is not easy. The air is disturbed. The front tires can lose bite. The car can slide more than expected. And when the car slides, the tires heat up. When the tires heat up, the exit suffers. When the exit suffers, the straight becomes longer for the car behind. That is how Hamilton can turn the sprint into a loop. The rival pushes to stay close. The tires complain. The exit gets worse. Ferrari stretches away. The rival pushes harder. The tires suffer again. It does not look dramatic at first, but it destroys options. And that is why Hamilton's sprint pole feels like exposure. It exposes the possibility that the SF-26 is not just a car that can peak for one lap. It may be a car that can create a race shape. Pole becomes clean air. Clean air becomes tire control. Tire control becomes pace management. Pace management becomes pressure on everyone behind. And pressure becomes mistakes. That is the chain every rival team is afraid of. Because if Ferrari can start that chain early, the sprint may stop being open long before it is officially over. This is why the first laps become critical. If Mercedes, Red Bull, or McLaren can attack Hamilton immediately, they can test whether the SF-26 is truly comfortable under pressure. They can force him to defend. They can make him use the tires. They can ask Ferrari whether the pole was strength or just timing. But if Hamilton survives the opening phase cleanly, everything changes. The Ferrari settles. The tires stabilize. The rhythm begins. The crowd grows louder. The chasing cars start spending more than they want to spend. And suddenly, the sprint is no longer about whether Hamilton can be quick. It is about whether anyone can break his control before the laps run out. That is the danger of real sprint pace. It does not always look explosive. Sometimes it looks calm. A car that repeats. A driver who does not panic. A gap that stays alive. A rival who keeps getting close, but never close enough. A race that slowly becomes Ferrari's before anyone can point to one exact moment when it happened. That is what makes the SF-26 so interesting here. If Hamilton's pole was only a flash, the sprint will reveal it. The tires will fade. The car will slide. The rivals will smell weakness. And Ferrari will have taken the headline without owning the race. But if the pace is real, the opposite happens. Hamilton becomes harder to reach with every lap he controls. The car behind has to risk more. The strategist has fewer options. The driver becomes more impatient. And the whole field begins to understand that Ferrari did not just qualify well. Ferrari brought a car that can hurt them in race conditions. That is the part hidden inside the pole. A sprint pole is not only a reward. It is a question. Can you defend it? Can you repeat it? Can you manage the tires? Can you stop the drivers behind from turning your glory into pressure? Hamilton has answered these questions before many times. That is why the paddock cannot treat this like an ordinary pole. When Hamilton starts at the front, every small advantage becomes more valuable because he knows how to stretch it. Give him straight line speed and he can defend. Give him balance and he can protect the tires. Give him clean air and he can shape the race. Give him confidence at Silverstone and the whole sprint starts to feel like it is moving through his hands. That is why this block matters. Because the real exposure is not a radio line. The source does not provide a confirmed quote, and the story cannot depend on words we do not have. The real exposure is what Hamilton showed by putting Ferrari on sprint pole at a track that demands the truth. He showed the SF-26 may have more usable pace than rivals expected. He showed Ferrari may have found a window where the car can be trusted. He showed the sprint might not be about Ferrari holding on. It might be about everyone else trying to stop Hamilton before he takes control. And that is the first major warning. If the SF-26 is only fast for one lap, Silverstone will expose it. But if it has true sprint pace, Hamilton has already exposed something much more dangerous. Ferrari may not be chasing the race anymore. Ferrari may be preparing to control it. The second layer is where Ferrari's sprint pace stops being a possibility and starts becoming a threat. Because a car that is quick for one lap can be explained. A car that can stay quick while leading, defending, saving tires, and controlling the air behind it, that becomes a completely different problem. That is what every rival now has to find out about the SF-26. Was Hamilton's pole the best moment of the car, or only the first warning? Because sprint pace is not proven by the stopwatch alone. It is proven by what happens when the car has to repeat the work. Lap after lap, corner after corner, under pressure, with tires getting hotter, air getting dirtier for the cars behind, and every rival trying to force the leader into using more than he wants to use. That is where Hamilton becomes dangerous. He understands that the sprint does not need to be won with one explosive move. It can be won by controlling small things before anyone else notices they are becoming big. A clean exit, a slightly protected tire, a gap that stays just outside attack range, A rival forced to push harder through Silverstone's fast corners. A car behind losing a little grip, then a little confidence, then a little time. That is how a sprint can shift. Not with drama, with control. And if the SF-26 has real sprint pace, Hamilton can turn that control into a weapon from the first lap. The cars behind have a problem immediately. They cannot afford to let him settle, because once Hamilton gets into rhythm at Silverstone, he becomes harder to disturb. But they also cannot attack recklessly, because Silverstone punishes impatience. Push too hard in dirty air, and the front tires can start to suffer. Overdrive the fast corners, and the car begins sliding. Lose the exit, and Ferrari's straight-line defense becomes even harder to break. That is the trap. The rival has to be aggressive enough to pressure Hamilton, but calm enough not to destroy the tools needed to pass him. Too much aggression, and the tires pay. Too much patience, and the sprint disappears. This is why the opening laps would feel so tense inside every chasing garage. Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, everyone behind would be watching the same few signs. Is Hamilton pushing or managing? Is the Ferrari sliding or flowing? Are the tires overheating or staying calm? Is the gap opening because Hamilton is using everything or because the car has enough pace in hand? That last question is the one that changes the story. Because if Hamilton is leading while using everything, rivals can hope. They can wait for the tires to fall away. They can keep pressure on him. They can believe Ferrari's peak will fade. But if Hamilton is leading while managing, the mood becomes darker. Because that means the SF-26 is not just defending, is breathing. And a car that can breathe at the front of a sprint is a nightmare. Clean air helps the leader. The car gets smoother airflow. The tires are easier to protect. The driver has more freedom to choose the line, choose the pace, and choose when to push. Behind, the chasing cars are working harder just to stay close.